So on the 5th of May 2009, PopCap would release one of the greatest tower defense games ever made, Plants vs Zombies. Now back in the day, this game was an absolute huge success, spawning a multitude of sequels and some absolute masterpieces in other genres such as Garden Warfare 1 and 2. Well, what made this vibrant little 2D gem an award-winning classic? Let's take a trip down memory lane and discuss what made Plants vs Zombies so awesome. But before that, if you are new here and you do love all things gaming, please do consider subscribing and liking the video. Much love. Anyway, I remember first getting my hands on this game as a little 10-year-old lad, and between this, Call of Duty Zombies, Left 4 Dead 2, and Dead Rising 2, it's fair to say zombies were definitely dominating the gaming landscape at the time. But where this game obviously shines through is by adopting that zombie genre and presenting it in a mode we've never seen before. At the time, the only other tower defense game of any note was Bloons Tower Defense, and don't get me wrong, that game is awesome, but unfortunately it wasn't made accessible on console, and of course it has nothing to do with zombies. However, due to being on multiple platforms, Plants vs Zombies was able to attract a significantly large audience, which ultimately only aided in its popularity and therefore its success as a whole. So one of the core aspects which made this game so great is that simple but addictive gameplay. Learning how to use different plant abilities to work against each different type of zombies enables the player to try out different strategies and learn the most effective ways of completing levels. There's something really satisfying about building up your squad of plants and creating this arsenal to battle off this unending wave of zombies. Progression within video games to me is one of the biggest elements in keeping the player engaged, so watching more and more plants grow and more damage being output is just really cool. You really feel like you're creating a platoon of soldiers to fight off against these hordes, and you're like a little manager as such. It's just brilliant. So speaking of the plants themselves, their designs are just purely iconic. Each one of them is distinctively recognizable in their own right. Things like the pea shooter, the chomper, sunflower, the walnut, they're just instantly recognizable to people that haven't even played the game itself, let alone actual Plants vs Zombies fans. And the fact that these are, granted loosely, based off real life plants just gives the game a deeper level of creativity and, more importantly, originality. That is what makes this game so memorable. The differing ways in which each plant actually plays also adds so much to the gameplay itself, because those that have played it can say it's not as simple as every single plant will just attack all of the zombies that are coming towards you, right? You have an entire budgeting system which is influenced by the level of sunflowers you have on the field. You have your standard attackers, so you've got your pea shooters, your repeaters. You've even then got defensive units like pumpkins and walnuts, which are purely just there to be eaten, and just give your attacking units more time to inflict further damage. You even have some plants that are nocturnal and can only be used on certain missions unless if you wake them up with a coffee bean. There's so much diversification in what you can use. Now when you combine this with the fact that you can only take 9 types of plant seed each wave, it adds such a level of challenge for the player because it restricts the full sandbox of plants that you're able to use. It's within these restrictions which adds so much strategy to the gameplay itself. Since the player will face different zombies at different points, a player's setup needs to change in order to adapt and meet these enemies. Now again, this only adds to the replay value on offer within Plants vs Zombies, as the player never knows what changes to their setup they're going to need to make. You get a little preview before the level starts where you see which enemy is going to be coming in, but you then need to adapt and change your plant layout in order to accommodate this. Of course, some of the plants are considered as meta and they are just the best sort of things you can get, but there really is no right way to win. Every plant that is on offer is viable and has its own place in the sandbox. Other than the Scaredy Shroom, that thing fucking sucks. Jokes aside though, it is the variety provided to the player which can make each level its own. Now, this is only further demonstrated by the variety of levels throughout the main campaign. These levels range from day to night, pool theme to rooftop, all of which provide different plants, strategies, enemies and challenges which all just keep the gameplay fresh. One of the core fundamental issues with all tower defense games, in my opinion, is their repetitiveness. You know exactly what you're going to get each time. So having this change to strategy to accommodate different enemies is just done fantastically. It's also worth mentioning that as the years have gone by, Plants vs Zombies has also seen its fair share of mods incorporated. Now, I haven't experienced any of these personally because it's all on PC and I'm very much a little console scrub, but any community created modded content is a fantastic way of creating more replay value for players. It does so that this does only really benefit PC players, but still, it highlights the ability that Plants vs Zombies has to offer new and refreshing experiences 15 years since the original game was released. That is impressive. I feel that another core aspect of Plants vs Zombies which does make it so great is just as simple as how visually appealing it is. To me, the graphics on this game are just timeless. There's something so tranquil and satisfying about watching the little idle sway of the sunflowers and the pea shooters. It's just brilliant. Obviously it's incredibly vibrant, it's eye-catching, but just the designs themselves just have a level of class to them. I mean, it's not exactly era-defining graphics what you find in this game, but they do still look good and hold up in 2024. They do, it's its own art style, it's taken its own mold. I feel like PopCap did such a good job at giving the plants so much life, bearing in mind they are little 2D, non-talking things on the screen. Even the simple little touches of like the walnuts crying when they're about to die, or like the doom shrooms just looking really fucking angry when they explode. It's those little touches that just give the game so much life. Now, when talking about Plants vs Zombies, I think that one element that you can't forget is just how good the secondary game modes were. Obviously, the survival mode, that endless survival, is without doubt top tier, and it is the best way to play the game once you've completed the campaign. But the other little elements like the mini games that it has, so like the walnut bowling, or even stupid shit like the Zomquarium, or like the slot machine, or Zombotany, or even like the heavy weapon ones. It was just all different characteristics and different shake-ups of the current pre-existing gameplay that you've already experienced throughout the campaign, just presented in a completely different format, and that enabled, again, the favourite thing I like saying in this video, so much replay value. There were countless different ways you could experience this game. Even more so if you had a buddy to play local co-op with, because the game was still accessible and there was even small features added, such as the little butter that you could put on top of zombies' heads to stop them from moving if you were the second player. It's little things like that that give the game so much character. You also had the Zen Garden, which was a really cool way of sort of again expressing that tranquility of just having plants. However, there was actually a use in having this as well. It would obviously provide you money to buy other types of plants. Now, obviously late game, once you complete the campaign, you don't really need this as much, but actually working through the campaign throughout the missions, this was actually kind of a handy little side hustle boost of income for you. Speaking of the Zen Garden, although this does extend to the wider game itself, the music that plays in that section is, to me, like some of the most iconic in gaming. Like, it's stuck in my brain, that tranquil little rhythm that plays. Just the whole music throughout this game is very, very good and instantly recognizable. And that's really saying something, bearing in mind this was a ported game over from a Mac in 2009. Like, it's not exactly a AAA title as such, but it still is able to produce little memorable things. Speaking of, I absolutely loved that there was a leaderboard section where you could just essentially flex how insane you could make your house. I think it was all tied to the achievements in the game, so if you got all of them, you'd have this bougie ass house with like all of these weird things in front of you, like including like the amount of zombie kills that you've got and stuff in the game. Again, it's such a little element, but it just gives the game so much character. You can clearly see the love that went into making this first Plants vs Zombies. But what do you guys think? Is this the best tower defense game to be made? I think that's a pretty bold claim, but for me it's definitely up there in the running. I mean, how can it not be when you've got Crazy Dave fucking gargling at you every few levels? And not to mention one of the most earwormy songs I've ever heard. But let me know what you think. Have you ever played the original Plants vs Zombies, or did this miss you? Would you consider going back and looking at it if you haven't already? Let me know all in the comments down below, and if you are new here and you haven't subscribed already, I would greatly appreciate it. Anyways, thanks ever so much for watching. I'll hopefully see you in another video sometime soon.